Okay, time to kick off part 2 of our podcast, Building Agile Teams. So in the first one, we covered why you might want to build Agile teams, and we dived deeply into cross-functional teams. In this section, we're gonna continue that conversation and look at some of the other things around building the teams. And this is how to build the team, not what you do with the team once it exists. So, welcome to the podcast. We've decided on a name as well. This is Agile on Air. And my name is Philip Cutcliffe. I'm an Agile coach with Agility.
Yeah, I'm Dan Gibson, also an Agile coach with Agility.
And my name is Stephen Mackenzie, also with Agility. I work as an agility coach or team coach or process coach, and occasionally other roles as well.
Oh.
Yeah, we all like to do a little bit of everything.
Always a show off around the table. Good stuff. No, it's good to be multi-talented.
Yes. Okay, so colocation. Ooh, is that still a thing in 2021? Moving into 2022.
Well, what is colocation then, and why would we aspire to that?
Well, we were having a little chat about it, weren't we? And we thought, well, colocation. It used to mean physical co-location, but now there could be a concept of digital co-location. Ooh. How about, let's unearth that. So physical co-location, which is old school co-location, that was in the same office, in the same building, in the same room, sharing the same space with a team where you've kind of taken over the space. You've got the wall space and to put all your stuff on the wall. You've got a space that you've made your own. You're sitting right next to each other. You're there. You've got everybody in your team who you need with you, and you've got a space that's set up for you, and you can just tap somebody on the shoulder to convey information in that face-to-face with the Agile Manifesto.
Implementing that Agile principle. The most efficient and effective means of communication or conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation.
It's face-to-face, and it used to mean face-to-face because we didn't really do a lot on the video conferences. It was in its infancy in those days, but it wasn't like today where everybody's on a Teams call all the time. So
come and talk to me. Don't send me a letter. Don't send me an
email. Yeah. But now we've got the whole kind of digital face-to-face, and I think we've got, you could say there's like digital co-location, where you've got a team that shares the same Slack channel or Teams channel. They've got their own Miro board that they're using as, we used to have a physical information radiator, so to speak, and now it's like, you've got these boards that you can put stuff on. You've got a shared Jira board, etc., etc. So I think, co-location has changed. And it's a different thing now.
So you're very relaxed about being in the same physical space now.
I'm right. So this is another thing. So I wonder whether it's like an age thing, because you're quite old school. You're
really old, Phil.
You're the
old school in
there.
attitudes.
But you basically you keep talking about how you like going back into an office, and I'm sort of with you on it, right? Now the thing is, okay, if somebody came to me tomorrow and went, Dan, I want to build this product, this app really quickly. I want to assemble a team. And you've got a choice. I'm going to give you, 5 plus or minus 2, whatever it is, developers.
Let's say 7. let's say you can have 7 devs.
Yes.
Do you want to build them all in Southampton in an
do
office
I want them
here?
in an office with me side by side, so we're all like, interacting and tapping each other on the shoulder and working together around a physical board, or do I want them just scattered around the globe? I want them with me.
I genuinely didn't know what you were going to say then.
No, I do, because why did you think I was like, a child of the digital age?
But it depends on your skills as a team builder, doesn't it? It depends on your culture as an organisation. What can you support? Can you support the online tools, can you build a team and a culture of collaboration remotely, or are you much more comfortable building that team and culture in person?
Yeah.
And then that's in tension with, do I have the skills that I need in my team locally?
Yeah. I think it's been really interesting during the pandemic where, I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure you've done exactly the same as me. You've started working with companies and you don't get that first physical introduction. And I just think it makes a massive difference. I met somebody the other day, and we'd had a sort of like a little bit of a difficult start, and I think it's harder to read body language and react to people when you're over a digital connection rather than when you're in person. And like when we met physically, it was like, okay, it was just so much more of a pleasant interaction. And I've had this a couple of times actually, and whether that's maybe my digital skills are lacking, but I don't think it's necessarily the case. I think it's easier to build relationships when you're in a room with someone and share a coffee.
But
with
I
them.
don't think it's down to your personal capabilities. I think it is a cultural thing, and I've worked in organisations that have recognised the digital opportunity and said to their staff, go and work outside of the office, and yet they say, but you're not allowed to use this collaboration tool, you're not allowed to use that one. And that is a cultural thing. They're just not recognising the richness of collaboration that is needed to be supported.
Well, I want to build on that, because there was a reason that it was in the Agile Manifesto. Why co-location, So
it was face to face, not co-location.
Yeah, well, as an efficient and effective means of conveying information. But actually, we know that we love to pair work.
So pairing,
and there's,
but you can digitally pair.
There's collaboration.
But is it the same? Is it as of easy to do?
Not for us, maybe. And this is the thing. I'm interested in this whole thing at the moment where we've got what's called the Great Resignation, and people are saying, if you make me go into the office all the time, I'm going to resign. Now, I'm a full believer in an actual balance, that it's great to have some face-to-face time in the office, but it's great to have your time at home, so you can put the curry on or put some washing in the machine and then get on with your work. And, I've been up to London this week, and, if I was doing that every day, it would suck, yeah? So it's a great thing to have that balance, but I do think it really helps people collaborate, and it does help break down barriers in relationship building. But I wonder whether actually the kids who grew up with digital devices and social media from day one, whether it feels more natural to them to have those kind of digital relationships at a distance.
So with the way I see it, there are some things that are easier to do in person, face to face. So building the relationships is one thing you mentioned. Learning something new. Yeah. So if you're having to work with someone to learn something new, I find that massively easier and more productive. I mean, we're all trainers here as well. Oh. Yeah. So.
Well, I'm going to come on to that, because I was shocked. I transitioned my training to online throughout the pandemic, and I was expecting my net promoter score to go right down. It stayed the same, if not improved on some.
But that's people's view of you and your training. But did they come away from the course having learnt as much?
I mean,
how do you judge that?
How do you judge that?
God knows. But what I have seen is some younger people coming into the office, and they're not coming into the office. Yeah. They're joining organisations. They're sent a bunch of PowerPoints, and they're there thinking, what do I do?
Oh yeah, I get that. Starting a job remotely is atrocious, I think. I really do think it's terrible. And I do think I'm pretty sure it feels to me like people don't see you as human until you've basically been in a room with them physically. And so it's really weird. And the first time I saw that, it's like my first real experience getting into offshore development. And I was working I'd always done a bit of offshore stuff, but we really went into it when I was in Screwfix, like 2007, 2008. And, you'd ask people for you'd convey requirements to people before you'd met them. And it was like, they didn't really know you and they didn't really get you. And then Screwfix were good at sending people out offshore or bringing offshore people onshore. Yeah. And once you'd met them, it was a whole and shared a beer with them. It's a whole different conversation. It's like, before it was like, who's this guy with this crazy requirement? And then it's like, hi Dan, and what are you looking for from this product?
Exactly the same thing with a very large, emphasis, Indian offshoring primarily, and we were frustrated with some of the quality of the developers. We're like, well, what's going on? Well, we tried to bring them onshore, and exactly the same person, literally they were remote and then they came onshore, and it was like a different experience.
Yeah.
They, we liked each other more. They developed more understanding. You could see when they got it and when they didn't get it, and productivity soared.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to quite put your finger on why that was, but it just physically being in the same space helped.
Yeah, and I think it's these days there's less barriers to the digital thing, but it's still, in my mind, it's lacking something that you get when being in a room. And I was going to add to your list, actually, brainstorming ideas.
Oh, yes.
Like when you're around a whiteboard,
yes,
and it's all, and the juices are flowing and everybody's like riffing off each other. And so the other thing with the digital world is it's very clinical about how a conversation emerges. Anybody who's been to a Zoom house party will know.
Oh, yes. I don't want to go to any more Zoom socials.
Anybody who went to a Zoom house party probably went to 2 and then went, this is shit. I'm not doing this ever again, right? Because you go into a Zoom house party, go into a house party and you go into the room. Imagine if we went into and treated like a normal house party, like a Zoom house party. You'd have one person talking at a time, and you'd stop everybody talking in the room. And this is just not how things happen. People go into a room and they kind of split, and they morph into different groups, and they chat to other people, and it allows that sort of circulation and intermingling within the physical world that you can't do on something like Zoom, because it's very controlled. The best you can do is get somebody like a controller to break you out into breakout rooms. But again, controlled.
Well, so this is something that we tried to replicate, and Zoom eventually enabled the feature where you can create the breakout rooms and the participants can move between them themselves. But I've not had it completely mirror the real world yet.
No, it doesn't mirror. Don't get me wrong. It's a brilliant training technique, because it totally moves the dynamic.
We were trying to do this with the virtual Agile South Coasts, which is a meetup where people would come in. One of the things that we know that people value is the ability to just have ad hoc conversations with one or two people who are interested. So we're just trying to replicate that.
You miss the ad hoc conversations, and that's what I found with physical training, right? Because a lot of people get a lot of value, not from just the training class. It's when you're wandering to lunch and then somebody's going, I've got this problem, and it's connected with the course material, but it's something they specifically want to ask, where in the virtual world they physically have to set up a meeting with me, but they can just chat while on a stroll to the lunch hall at whatever hotel facility we're training at. And that for me, those conversations are as important as when you're delivering the actual training material.
So, what does colocation mean? And I'm going to propose being in the same space. But I'm not going to say if that's a physical space or a virtual space.
Right.
It's a technology.
So basically, it could be today, it could be us in the same space.
Underneath the same roof with the same walls around us, keeping us warm and dry and giving us a place to stick stuff.
Or it could be Zuckerberg leading us into the metaverse.
It could be. So colocation, cool colocation means being in a space where we can collaborate. And we're talking about knowledge work. So if we were building holes in the roads to put pipes in, this isn't a conversation. So we're talking about knowledge work. So we'll assume that the work that we need to do doesn't require us to be in the same space. So what the colocation offers us are a place where we can form a team.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Through building personal, individual relationships with each other, a place where we can collaborate.
Yep.
A place where we can share learning.
Yeah.
That might be formally sharing learning.
Yeah.
Informally sharing learning, which would be the conversations that we have that we hadn't planned to have that conversation today, but it suddenly seems relevant.
Yeah.
And a place where we feel comfortable.
Yeah. And it's the place where there's highest bandwidth of communication because, the physical space allows you to have a high bandwidth one-on-one conversation, but it's when you get to that group team dynamic thing, then you can allow that whole sort of very organic, very chaotic sort of splitting of people into different conversations and building up complex communication paths which just don't happen in a virtual environment.
And so we wouldn't, if we believe we've got all these boxes and probably more to tick, we would recognise that sometimes you can be in the same physical space, but if you're not allowed to stick something on the wall.
Oh, yeah. I think co-location, you've got to have, not just, you can't be in the same building on different floors. You've got to be in the same space together, and you've got to have a space where you can share your ideas in a physical domain.
Oh no, because we know that we speak 7 times less to somebody who's just 2 desks away from us.
Yeah.
And once you're on another floor, you might as well be down the street, and once you're down the street, you might as well be in another county. So
and I think we've all got stories where we've seen that whole thing, teamwork get killed by bad arrangement of people in spaces. I've told you that story about Flybe, where I was working with Flybe, and we had a team in these little old buildings. They're pokey old buildings, but they were small rooms where you could fit about 7 people in, and it worked brilliantly. And then they moved us to an open plan, and they thought, the web team's got a lot of knowledge about this web technology. Let's go and spread them around an open plan office. And then it was just a nightmare. I hated it after that.
Oh yeah, because everybody wanted to have their own web developer within earshot.
Yeah, basically.
Well, yes.
Well, this is kind of where I want to steer this, is that co-location's not a yes or a no question. There's lots of shades of grey.
Yep.
So for you, with your team in a pokey little office you could write on the walls, that's like one end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And then you got spread around, but you could probably still meet up. And at the other end of the spectrum, you've got teams spread around the globe, and I have genuinely seen teams where they've got someone in Australia, and they've got someone in the UK and someone in the US, and they're hoping that team is going to work together and form a team. Well, the lights went out again, haven't they? We have to do the lights
dance.
dance.
Let's do the lights dance. Right. Okay.
It's a nudge to make our talking quicker, isn't it? But what I'm getting at with the extreme example is there's lots of shades in the middle. So there's lots of different time zones. Maybe there's just putting everything in one time zone. So maybe the UK and South Africa. Those people are likely never going to meet, but at least their working hours overlap.
But I think it goes back to the competence of the organisation that's bringing these people together. Are they genuinely forming a team?
Yeah.
And do they have a culture and technology to support the collaboration of formal and informal knowledge sharing that needs to happen?
Yeah, that's it. If you're going to have a remotely distributed team, you need to make sure you've got the tooling in place so that you can share the information.
And I don't think we would for most of the work that we do, ever design or recommend a team be distributed across time zones, just because it is so hard. But there are organisations that have that at their DNA. You were talking about WordPress.
Yeah, and they recruit all around the globe, and actually they see the time difference as an advantage, and so they see that they could have somebody working on something throughout the daytime in the UK, and then work continues in Australia. And it's an interesting when you listen to WordPress, because they value one thing they value at interviewing time is written communication, because a lot of stuff is written down, and it depends whether you want to be in a part of an organisation that writes a lot down.
Yeah, with something like that though, it's not like we're doing teams of colouring in. I've coloured in the background. It's over to you to colour in the cow. It's really hard knowledge work.
Yeah. Well, it is hard knowledge work, but their rationale is, so
they can find the best talent, can't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the thing. It's like when especially if you're in the UK, and you want to kick off a software project, you've got to decide, how quickly do you want to mobilise a team? So if I want to set up a reasonably sized team in Southampton tomorrow, I'm not going to, right? I'm going to have to mobilise. If it's a software development team, it's going to take me months to mobilise, right? Especially if it's a specialised, in-demand resource. It's like JavaScript or React, something like that we're going to get a bunch of people in. It's going to take months to mobilise, and if you go global, you can just go and get people and mobilize quicker. So one of the things about agile and lean is reducing lead times. And you think, well, actually, if I'm not prepared to go and reduce that lead time for mobilization, I'm not being particularly agile. So it's a balance, isn't it? It's really difficult.
Well, I keep coming back to that shades of grey. So, you've got, all right, you're going to do the same time zone. You might even do the same country. But there's a team that never meets, and so never goes through that bit where they've met them in person and perhaps like each other. Or you're going to go fully remote. There's lots of different shades. So I would be tempted even now, like you, if I was to build a team, to accept that they'd be remote. But could you maybe bring them together once a fortnight?
Yeah, and I think one of the good tactics for remote is I always think when I'm thinking, okay, location strategy, I always think, okay, I'll have the, product management side shore-based and have everybody located who is, like, for example, the product managers, product owners, kind of UX people, shore side.
Yes.
But then I just have one location that I choose, whether it's the Ukraine or India, and have the ability for those guys to co-locate. And so you're not managing lots of different geographies, lots of different time zones.
Yes. I think it comes down to motivated individuals and giving them the environment and tools that they need to get the job done. And that is what co-location is about. And co-location for that group might mean put them in the same room and just let them get on with stuff, talk to each other and collaborate, or it might mean something more sophisticated, more digital.
Yeah.
If that's what you...
Yeah. And I think probably to draw this conversation near to a conclusion, that you have to be very deliberate about whether your team is a remote first or a co-located physical first team, because there will be problems if you have vagaries around that, right?
Have a clearly defined culture. Make sure.
It's like, okay, if you're going to be a physical first team, your primary place of work is the office place. Working away from the office is something you might do maybe 1 day or 2 days a week, but it allows stuff to be on the office walls, because that's a place where you'll get information. Now, if you're remote first, everything has got to be remote. Nothing's on a physical wall. Everything's got to be accessible digitally. And I think you've got to make those decisions. And I think these days it's going more digital, because I think people are, if it's not 1 or 2 days a week, it's starting to drift into 3 days a week. They're going to be working from home, and you don't have any choice when it's got to that point. That you've literally got to start using the digital domain more and sharing information digitally, and not rely on wall space and physical spaces for the capture of information.
Yeah, sounds good. Checking our cheat sheet here, is there anything else we wanted to cover around co-location, or are we at summing up stage?
I think, I think we've done that to death. I think we've gone through.
Stick a fork in it. It's done. Right. Okay.
All right. I'll have a go at summing up, and you can tell me the bits I missed.
Yeah.
So, co-location is very much something that you have to decide early on. So, are you going to be digital first or in a room first?
Yep.
If you're going to be digital first, there's a whole load of things that you will need to put in place that are different to being in a room. If you are going to consider co-location, I think I really, really recommend everyone does recognise that there are lots of shades of grey. So co-location isn't black or white, and there are things that you can do to improve the co-locatedness, if that's a thing, of your team.
Understand what needs you're supporting through co-location, and make sure you genuinely are.
Yep.
And when we talk about the different shades, there's considering time zone. Can people get together sometimes? Can people have a space to stick stuff on the wall? How often are they going to get together? Those kinds of
Integrating
things.
New starters, I think, is key as well.
Yeah. And then finally, the bit that we talked about at the start was why we co-locate. And I think, Stephen, you summarised that probably quite well earlier.
To help team.
So I've done that before.
We'll edit into the right place. Supporting team formation, supporting individual relationships between people. That supports our respect for each other and supports the type of collaboration that we'll have. But I think, and Dan gave us the example of supporting informal knowledge sharing over and above the formal knowledge sharing that we planned for, but the informal knowledge sharing and ability to collaborate.
Great.
Yeah. Excellent.
Okay. Well, that's the end of our second podcast.